There is no audio.
We are still working. So, okay. Sorry for the trouble. We can start again.
There's no audio.
वर्चुअल यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ पाकिस्तान के ज़ेर एहतमाम 3 रोज़ा इंटरनेशनल कॉन्फ्रेंस का लाहौर के मुकामी होटल में इनेकाद किया गया। AAOU 2019 के पहले दिन ओपनिंग सेशन के चीफ गेस्ट फेडरल मिनिस्टर फॉर आईटी एंड टेलीकम्युनिकेशन मकबूल सदीकी थे, जिनके
Kecil suaranya.
अहमद सदीकी थे। AAOU 2019 के कॉन्फ्रेंस चेयर प्रोफेसर डॉक्टर मसूद इलाही बाबर ने कॉन्फ्रेंस के शुरका को खुशामदीद कहते हुए कहा,
Virtual University of Pakistan being the leader around the world has been honored to hold this 33rd Asian Association of Open Universities on 2019.
Co-chair डॉक्टर नासिर नवीद ने अपने खिताब में कहा,
I'm sorry, there is a technical problem with the audio. We will replay.
वर्चुअल यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ पाकिस्तान के ज़ेर एहतमाम 3 रोज़ा इंटरनेशनल कॉन्फ्रेंस का लाहौर के मुकामी होटल में इनेकाद किया गया। AAOU 2019 के पहले दिन ओपनिंग सेशन के चीफ गेस्ट फेडरल मिनिस्टर फॉर आईटी एंड टेलीकम्युनिकेशन डॉक्टर खालिद मकबूल सदीकी थे, जिनके हमरा फेडरल सेक्रेटरी आईटी एंड टेलीकम्युनिकेशन मिस्टर शुएब अहमद सदीकी थे। AAOU 2019 के कॉन्फ्रेंस चेयर प्रोफेसर डॉक्टर मसूद इलाही बाबर ने कॉन्फ्रेंस के शुरका को खुशामदीद कहते हुए कहा,
Virtual University of Pakistan being the leader in ICT based education in Asia and around the world has been honored to hold this 33rd Asian Association of Open Universities Conference 2019.
कॉन्फ्रेंस के को-चेयर डॉक्टर नासिर नवीद ने अपने खिताब में कहा,
We are grateful to the Executive Committee and General Body members of the Asian Association of Open Universities for showing confidence in Pakistan, trusting the capabilities of virtual university and providing opportunity to host this 33rd conference of the series.
Rector Virtual University Mr. Naeem Tariq ने अपने खिताब में कहा,
Today is a great honor for me to represent the Virtual University of Pakistan for hosting the 33rd AAOU Annual Conference.
AAOU 2019 में दुनिया के मुख्तलिफ ममालिक से आए हुए मंदूबीन ने शिरकत की, जिनमें श्रीलंका, थाईलैंड, इंडोनेशिया, जनूबी कोरिया, कनाडा, फिलिपाइन, चीन, मॉरिटानिया, यूनान, वियतनाम, बर्मा, मलेशिया, जापान, ईरान, मालदीव, तुर्की और जनूबी अफ्रीका शामिल थे। प्लेनरी सेशंस में कीनोट स्पीकर्स ने अपने मुकालाजात पढ़ते हुए कहा,
Or the FIRE or IR 4.0 to some. to reflect the digital configuration of this phenomenon.
In this presentation, I will first review the evolution of ODL and the different institutional models that have emerged over the years.
Those students who are studying online or virtually or blended kind of thing should be given opportunities to travel.
This is the time when I think we have to reflect and rethink about what we have been doing for decades and what are the meaning of open to us.
The learning objects which we actually align to give to the learners is dependent on the fact what are the learner's abilities in terms of his or her learning priorities, his or her background, his or her personal profiles.
टेक्निकल सेशंस में जहां मुख्तलिफ ममालिक से आए हुए स्कॉलर्स ने अपने मुकाले पढ़े, वहीं पाकिस्तान के स्कॉलर्स ने भी अपने मुकाले पढ़े। चीफ गेस्ट फेडरल मिनिस्टर फॉर आईटी एंड टेलीकम्युनिकेशन डॉक्टर खालिद मकबूल सदीकी ने तालीम की अहमियत पर बात करते हुए कहा,
I would like to congratulate Virtual University of Pakistan for hosting the AAOU. The conference may establish cooperation among the researchers of Open University in Asia and around the world.
पाकिस्तान के सॉफ्ट इमेज को बेहतर बनाने के लिए कॉन्फ्रेंस के दूसरे रोज शाम को गाला डिनर का एहतमाम किया गया, जिसमें पाकिस्तानी मौसीकी से हाज़रीन खूब लुत्फ़अंदोज़ हुए। मुख्तलिफ ममालिक के मंदूबीन ने अपने अपने मुल्कों के नग़मे और तराने पेश किए। तकरीब के तीसरे और आखिरी रोज इज्जत माब सदर इस्लामी जमहूरिया पाकिस्तान जनाब डॉक्टर आरिफ अलवी ने मेहमान ख़ुसूसी के तौर पर शिरकत की। उन्होंने तालीम को सब लोगों के लिए आम करने पर जोर देते हुए कहा,
It is my pleasure to be here at the 33rd Annual Conference of the Asian Association of Open Universities, hosted by the Virtual University in Pakistan. We must first request some universities in the world to remove copyright on knowledge. Knowledge never had a copyright.
First of all, I would like to say welcome to the third AAOU Presidential Speech Series. And today we are very fortunate because we have two outstanding speakers who dedicated their lives to the development of distance education, particularly in Asia. The first, we have Professor Dr. Melinda Bandalaria, Chancellor and Professor of the University of the Philippines, Open University, or UPOU. And the second, Professor Naeem Tariq, the Rector of Virtual University, the university who hosted the previous AAOU conference. As this is the third one for those who attending the third AAOU President Speech Series, I would like to say welcome again. And for those who attend this for the first time, I would say that you are now coming to a very, very rare and precious moment where you can get information, share experience, and new insight to the distance education. And then because our time is limited, I would like to invite the President of the AAOU, Professor Ojat Darojat, also the Rector of Universitas Terbuka, to deliver opening remarks. Please unmute the microphone, Pak.
Sure. Yeah, I will. Thank you, Paramat. Can you hear me?
Yes, Pak.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon to distinguished speakers, Professor Melinda Bandalaria, the Chancellor at the University of the Philippines, Open University, and also my friend, Professor Naeem Tariq, Director and the Director of Finance at Virtual University in Pakistan, and also Dr. Dewi Artati Padma Putri, the Head of Center for Overseas Students at Universitas Terbuka Indonesia. And of course, to all members of ASEAN Association of Open Universities and all participants attending this international webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, the AAOU is committed to promote and support the development of distance learning, particularly in Asia. One of the initiatives is through sharing experiences and knowledge, as well as best practices among the AAOU members in order to make distance education improve and find the most ideal distance education practices. We are now attending the third AAOU President Speech Series webinar with the theme Responding COVID-19 to Remove Barriers, Access, Equity, and Inclusions, focusing on two sub-themes. First, the presentation on policy and the directions, and this will be delivered by Professor Melinda dela Bandalaria, Chancellor and Professor at the University of Philippines, Open University, or UPOU. As we know, Professor Bandalaria commitment to promote distance education is without questions. As the previous president of AAOU, your total involvement in AAOU initiative and program is highly appreciated. And second, Professor Naeem Tariq, the Rector and the Director of Finance at the Virtual University of Pakistan, will deliver a presentation on theme Flipping Microcredentials and MOOCs. This is very current issues in open distance learning. We visited your institution last year on the 33rd annual conference, and we got much impression of some program conducted by your institutions, and we are sure that from this webinar we will learn much from you. And third, Dr. Dewi Padmo, my friend here in Universitas Terbuka, your experience as an expert on educational technology and the head of the Institute for Learning Material Development at Universitas Terbuka for years, will lighten up our webinar today. At last, to all participants, I thank you for taking your time to join our event. the regulation for today's webinar are different from the previous events. So please pay attention to all the regulations which will be delivered by the AAOU Secretary General, Rahmat Budiman, Ph.D. And finally, I hope this program will not only be lighting up, but also giving us ideas, new knowledge for better future. Enjoy the webinar and have a great day. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Professor Ojat, Darojat. And without any delay, I would like to invite the chair of the third AAOU Presidential Speech Series, Dewi Artati Padmo Putri MA Ph.D. to lead the session. Ibu Dewi Padmo, time is yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rahmat. Good afternoon, everybody, especially Professor Ojat Darojat and also Professor Melinda and Professor Naeem Tariq. It is very nice to meet you in this webinar session, the third AAOU Presidential Speech Series 2020. I hope we will have a great day and we will get a lot of information that will be discussed for today. We are so aware that the COVID-19 really affected our daily life around the globe. Everyone's have an effect on because of the COVID-19, including in education. We have a lot of problems in education because of the COVID-19, but we must be able to survive and we have to get through these difficult times and see opportunities. I have one quote from the Benjamin Franklin that he said, out of adversity comes opportunity. So I'm sure that the COVID-19 that makes everybody very busy, get a lot of headache, but I'm sure we will get opportunity how to cope with these problems. That's why the webinar today, we will discuss about the policy and direction that is very important to continue our life, because without the policy and without the direction from our institution, from our government, from international spectrum, it will be quite difficult to cope with COVID-19. And today, in this webinar, we have two distinguished speakers, as already introduced by Professor Ojat Darojat. We have Professor Melinda Professor Melinda Peña Bandalaria, and also Professor Naeem Tariq. Professor Melinda Peña Bandalaria is a Chancellor of the University of Philippine Open University, and Professor Naeem Tariq is a Rector and also Director of Finance of the Virtual University of Pakistan. I am very honored to have you both here in the AAOU Presidential Speech Series Webinar 2020, and thank you very much for spending your previous time to be with us this afternoon. Well, before we begin with the presentation from the first keynote speaker, Professor Dr. Melinda, I would like to inform you the rule of thumbs of this webinar. We will have for 1 hour and 45 minutes from now. So each keynote speaker will deliver the presentation for 20 minutes presentations. And after the two keynote speakers delivered their presentation, then we open the question and answer session. And we hope that the attendees or participants submit the question through the chat tools. This is to minimize the technical problems. And in addition, I would like to inform you that this session, this webinar session, is recorded and then will be uploaded to the AAOU website so that many more people will gain benefit from the discussion. And of course, the committee will provide e-certificate for the attendees. So don't forget to filling out the attendees list and the feedback form. Let's now we concentrate with presentation for our keynote speaker. And the first keynote speaker is Professor Melinda Peña Bandalaria. But from next, I will only call you Professor Melinda because your name is very long. It's difficult for me to pronounce it. So Professor Melinda, as I mentioned earlier, she is the Chancellor of University of the Philippines, Open University or OPOU, and she has a tons of experience and received many awards and recognition. For example, in 2017 to 2019, she was the woman in charge of the AAOU organization. She was the president of AAOU for 3 years. And then since 2016 to present, she is the chair of Asian Massive Open Online Course or MOOCs Steering Committee. And then in 2017, she received the second Gawat Pagulo for Excellence in Public Service. So I think it's a very high award in your country, right? And personally, she leads some projects such as a research on adoption of and impact of OER in Southeast Asia. And also, she published numerous books, chapter, and also journal articles on open distance learning. So most of them focus on the modern use of ICT. And the last but not least, she has delivered more than 20 plenary or speaker plus today. So it will be 21. Professor Melinda today will present about and will be discussed about policy and direction. As we are all aware that policy and direction in education sector become a pivot and guidelines to survive in dealing with COVID-19. Well, without further ado, now let's hear an insight from Professor Melinda. The time is yours, Professor Melinda, and you have 20 minutes to deliver your speech.
Yes, thank you very much for that, Professor Dewi, and good afternoon to everyone, to our Rector Ojat, Professor Rahmat, my fellow speaker, Professor Naeem of BUP, colleagues and friends, a pleasant day to all of you. And thank you and congratulations to our current AAOU Secretariat for organizing this virtual international forum. And thank you for the invitation for me to share my insights on policy and directions as we continue to respond to the disruption in education caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. So it's a pleasure to be with our AAOU community again. And even if we don't have our annual conference this year, this international forum will really keep us connected with one another and we can continue our sharing of knowledge and best practices, even with these restrictions in physical gatherings. So COVID-19 pandemic, the kind of event that we are holding now just shows that even with this COVID-19 pandemic, we continue with the AAOU tradition of sharing. And this is our space, the virtual space. So again, thank you very much and congratulations to our AAOU Secretariat. So allow me at this point to share my slides. Okay, so I hope, can you see my slides now?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So, okay. So, as mentioned and as introduced, I will be talking about policy and directions so we can ensure access and equity and inclusion as we continue to address the COVID-19 pandemic. So, let me give a short introduction about my university for our webinar participants who may be hearing me speak or talk for the first time today. Further, much of my insights in this talk this afternoon were drawn from my more than 25 years of working in this university. So as I stated in this slide, UP Open University is one of the 8 constituent units of the only national university in our country. So that's the University of the Philippines. And we were established in 1995 with the mandate of democratizing access to quality education through distance education. So we can say that right from the start, our mandate is really this, and our mission is really access and inclusion. So in 2001, we started our shift to distance e-learning or the use of modern ICTs to deliver instruction to our learners. And this enabled us to accept more than students from more than 70 locations outside the Philippines. And we became fully online in 2007. And this online experience from 2007 became our forerunner in the model of massive open online courses, which we started offering in 2013. And we were honored to serve the AAOU community as its president, it was mentioned earlier, for the term 2017 to 2019. And we still continue to be active member of this association as well as other international organizations. For that, of course, we are thankful for the trust given to us. These are our programs offered through the different faculties of study, total of 3 undergraduate programs, 26 graduate, diploma, and master programs, and 2 doctoral programs. And as I have mentioned, these are all fully online. And to date, we have developed and offered over 100 massive open online courses, in addition to the numerous non-degree and non-formal courses that we are offering as part of the continuing professional development opportunities to the various professionals in our country. Okay, so of course, we were all made to feel the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. It was as mentioned by Professor Dewi earlier. During the early part of the year, schools closed down to prevent the widespread of the disease. The pandemic is said to have caused the largest disruption of education in history, with a near universal impact on learners and teachers around the world. So by mid-April 2020, it was estimated that there were 94% of learners worldwide affected by the pandemic, representing 1.58 billion children and youth, from pre-primary to higher education, from 200 countries. And given the number of students that the AAOU member institutions are serving, then we can say that in this number, in this figure, 1.58 billion children, youth, and up to higher education, a significant portion also came from the AAOU member institutions. So as we all know, this disruption in education caused by the COVID-19 pandemic emphasize more than ever the nature of the current education system. And when I say current education system, I am referring to the pre-COVID-19 pandemic. So it is said that this education system, and we all know that, can be considered as non-exclusive and not flexible because it assumes the physical presence of teachers and students in the same space and at the same time. And as such, it cannot respond easily to the circumstances that force closure, whether this is due to pandemic, conflict, floods, fires, or some other forms of disasters. So because of that, this is one policy direction which we need to consider if we are to respond to the current pandemic or the COVID-19 pandemic in the context of access, equity, and inclusiveness. So for this reason, many institutions, because the pre-COVID education system is not responsive, it's not flexible enough, many institutions shifted to emergency remote learning just to make sure that learning would continue despite the COVID-19 pandemic, while protecting our students, our teachers, and the rest of the academic community. So remote learning was defined by the Commonwealth of Learning as an emergency measure, which attempts to replicate the classroom teaching and learning process in an online mode. So take note that there is already that assumption that the mode of instruction will be online and can only be considered a form or can also be considered a form of distance education, because it shares that basic feature of distance education, which is the separation of teacher and students in geographical space and in time. So the time given, especially to our teachers, to make the shift from conventional classroom instruction to emergency remote teaching was so short, and there was one literature which I read which described the teachers as instructional MacGyvers, because they have to make do with whatever knowledge, skills, and resources they have to deliver so that instruction or learning will continue despite this pandemic. So online learning became the immediate solution for many academic institutions. And however, given the uneven development of technologies in various countries, and this is something that we really know is true for many countries in Asia, online learning cannot be considered as the solution or as the only solution, especially for remote, rural, and resource-poor communities. So it was always mentioned that, like for instance, in the Philippines, COVID-19 pandemic further emphasized the social inequalities in many societies, which impact so much on access, equity, and inclusion in education opportunities. The digital exclusion is a serious barrier to access, equity, and inclusion, not only during the time of COVID-19 pandemic, but more so after, and should be considered as the new normal or direction in education even after the COVID-19 pandemic. So at this point, let me emphasize the point that I am driving at. Whatever policy or direction that we have to consider to ensure access, equity, and inclusion in education should not only be during the time of COVID-19 pandemic. Of course, we have to take note that we really need to pay close attention to that during this time, but we also have to consider that this is something that we should also be doing even after the COVID-19 pandemic and should be the overall direction for our education system. So as Professor Dewi mentioned earlier, there is something that we could learn as we continue to respond to the current pandemic. And this is something that we can bring back to the conventional mode of instruction after the pandemic. If it's just to emphasize and reiterate that policy should be put in place to ensure access, equity, and inclusion in education, then that is a very good thing that we will be bringing back to the education system, to the conventional mode of education, even after pandemic. So what are the imperatives for policy considerations and direction on access, equity, and inclusion in education? I have listed in this slide 4 imperatives, and I am sure, depending on your own context, you can add to this list, which can be a national policy and direction for your country. So these imperatives are, of course, we all know that education is not only a fundamental human right, it is an enabling right with direct impact on the realization of all other human rights. So without education, there is a great possibility that all the other human rights will not also be given to the individual. So it's like the individual freedom and empowerment, which yields important development benefits. Also, education is a powerful tool by which economically and socially marginalized adults and children can lift themselves out of poverty and participate fully as citizens. So the right to education opens the door to other human rights which every citizen should enjoy. So education also is a primary driver of progress across all 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So we cannot be talking of SDGs without talking of education inclusion. And it's not just an SDG number 4 concern. As I always say, at the center of all SDGs is education. Another imperative is the Paris message, which I know we are all familiar with. Central to the Paris message is the forecast on the number of students enrolled in higher education, rising to over 414 million in 2030. We may have to take another look or assess this forecast, given the fact that a large proportion of the student population were not able to go back to studying during the time of COVID-19 pandemic. The exclusion in education opportunities due to digital exclusion, poverty, made worse by the pandemic, may result in some changes to the projected number. The main message, however, remains, if we are to accommodate all these students and be true to the mantra of no one left behind, then relevant policies will have to be in place at the very least at the national level. Likewise, consideration should also be given to the marginalized sectors of the society, as well as the marginalized areas of the country, the physically challenged individuals, the digitally excluded, and those affected by the peace and order situation. So what policy recommendations and directions for education can we consider during this time of COVID-19 pandemic and beyond? So I have picked up some highlights in the policy brief released by the United Nations and would like to emphasize them in this presentation. So one policy recommendation and direction for education to ensure access, equity, and inclusion is the protection of the funding for education and coordination of impact of this funding allocation. So some possible strategies for this policy direction or recommendation include strengthening the domestic resource mobilization, preserve share of education, or give funding for education as the top priority. And if it is necessary for different countries to tackle inefficiencies like in tax collection, to identify a possible source of funding that can be devoted to education. There is also that need to strengthen international coordination and cooperation between institutions to avoid duplication of efforts by offering incentives for shared activities and collaboration among institutions nationally and internationally. This is also true if we are espousing the open education programs or initiatives. Therefore, there can be an open sharing across institutions and even across countries. We can even look at the South collaboration so that we can say that all our knowledge products and services are contextualized to our different needs. Development assistance for education should also be protected and making or using them for those who are at risk and those who are really needing the assistance, like the women and those coming from the low-income families. So another policy recommendation is the strengthening of the resilience of education system for equitable and sustainable development. Of course, I have discussed already SDG as the SDGs as one imperative for the education, the policies and direction for education. So resilience in the education system calls for flexibility, hence the need to develop appropriate national policies or frameworks to mainstream distance education. So this is calling on us, open universities who are into distance education, for us to influence the policy direction in our respective countries without making a distinction between distance, online, and face-to-face provision in terms of the qualifications awarded. I got this from the Commonwealth of Learning publication, but this is something that we all should really be working on, especially us at the Open University. So such education system, this flexible, resilient education system, can ensure that the vulnerabilities and needs specific to the different sectors like the women in times of crisis will likewise be addressed. So we can say that the kind of educational delivery that we are doing now at the Open Universities can probably be an example for this policy recommendation. Another direction in education which should be supported by relevant policy environment is the acceleration in the positive change in teaching and learning, specifically in the following: supporting the teaching profession and teachers' readiness. That means to say, providing assistance, providing funding, resources, so that we can continuously train our teachers and make them ready to respond to the different kinds of disruptions in education, just like what happened during the early part of the year. If our government, if there are policies which takes priority, which gives priority to the training and making sure that our teachers are ready, then probably we can say that we were more able to respond to the disruption that happened during the early part of the year. We also need to expand the definition of the right to education to include connectivity entitlement. This is very, very important, and this really calls for a national policy, so that when we say right to education, we are also talking about the right to connectivity or internet connectivity. And of course, this is related to the last item in this list, which is the promotion of the national ICT and connectivity strategy, as well as having national platforms to support online learning. So this is something that we really need to work on, because as we have witnessed, as we continue to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic and promote inclusion in education, that connectivity has become a very serious problem. To facilitate access, equity, and inclusion in education, there should be a strong consideration given to putting in place a national OER policy. This is something that we've been working on, at least in our country, in the Philippines. We've been working on to have or put in place that national OER policy that will promote the development and sharing of quality content. Supportive policies can be attained or can be patterned after the recommendation on OER, which was adopted unanimously by the UNESCO General Conference during its 40th session in November 2019. I still recall that some of our colleagues at the AAOU, we were together during the consultation, the country consultation in Paris last May. So I saw there Dariono, I saw there from our colleagues from Chuneo, from Japan, our colleagues from STOU. We were all there together, and we were able to contribute to these recommendations on OER, which was adopted by the UNESCO General Assembly. And there are also several strategies which we can look into so that we can put in place this national OER policy. So like, for instance, educational resources developed using public funds should be openly licensed or dedicated to the public domain. We should also encourage and support institutions to develop or update legal or policy frameworks to stimulate the creation, access, reuse, repurpose, adaptation, and redistribution of quality OER by the educators and learners. So this is something that we also need to promote. We also need to develop mechanisms as a part of our policy to create communities of practice, promote teacher professional development, which is also related to the teacher readiness, especially on the use of OERs. And there has to be also mechanisms to incentivize all stakeholders who are publishing their work in accessible format or in OER license, like the Creative Commons license. So this is something that we really need to work on as part of our direction in education. There should also be policies on OER, which will align in other national policy frameworks. So like, for instance, open access, open data, open source software, and open science. So if we can have all these things as part of our open education movement, it can be considered as our direction for education even after the COVID-19 pandemic. We should also look at the inclusion of OER in terms of transforming education, adjusting, enriching, or reforming our curricular programs in all forms of learning, whatever levels of learning, whether it's formal, informal, non-formal, basic, secondary, or tertiary, or higher education, it should be part of the education system. We also need to do more research on OER and make sure that we have these policies that apply the highest standards to privacy and data protection during the production and use of these OER materials, infrastructure, and related services. And of course, although different countries already have this policies, national policies, which look into the welfare of those who are physically challenged, so that we can be sure that no one is really no one is left behind. What can be considered as an additional focus is the integration into the existing laws or policies on PWDs, especially the Universal Design for Learning. This is especially true when we talk of open educational resources and other open access materials and services. So what lessons from the coronavirus pandemic, it was mentioned earlier, which we can consider as the direction or the future of education? So there is this question of, will we return to traditional passive learning in front of a whiteboard or blackboard or green board or whatever you may want to call it, or move to a new path, focus on student well-being and reducing the deep inequalities of global learning? These questions should be answered and should be considered in policy formulation and direction if we are to make our education system flexible, accessible, and inclusive enough, even during disruptions such as the one that we are experiencing now. So government, districts, schools must make every effort to ensure that policies, systems, and infrastructures are able to cope with future lockdowns to minimize these barriers. More needs to be done across the globe by ministries of education and education endowments if humanity is to get close to the 2030 development agenda. So what we hope to happen when we talk of the new normal and normalizing the new normal is this. This is the thing that we hope to see as the direction, wherein online education will be recognized as core to every school's plan for institutions' resilience and academic continuity. Meaning to say that online learning in full or in blend with face-to-face instruction will be the norm even after the COVID-19 pandemic. Further, we can no longer assume the traditional classroom education is the best education, and that the difference will be that online learning will also be acceptable and credible in the future. That is, given all these experiences that we have now, then we can say that we have so much on our hands. We have so much experience, we have so much work done, so that we can make sure that this direction for education is something that we can do even after the COVID-19, or especially after the COVID-19 pandemic. But of course, we have to consider that policy direction, our policy environment, should be able to prevent this from happening, wherein there is that much gap between those digitally excluded and the digitally included. We have to make sure that there will be equity in access to educational opportunities and learning outcomes. Now, what is the opportunity, or what are the opportunities for us at the Open Universities? So as many of you had noticed already, there's much space for us, open universities, member institutions of the Asian Association of Open Universities. There's so much space to claim as ours, our space. This is our time. This is our era. This is our space, and this is all about us. We are the leaders in this mode of instruction, and as such, we are in the position to influence policy formulation and direction in the educational system in our respective countries. We are in the position, we have the expertise to train other academics, our fellow educators, and we are in the position to offer cutting-edge programs to address the current pandemic so that we can make sure also that all learners will be included in the learning environment. So my message to our fellow members of the AAOU, let us not miss the boat. If we will be able to put in place policies that would espouse access, equity, inclusion, the values that we at the open universities are practicing and advocating, we are all moving towards what we can call as the university of the future, that of being agile or flexible, offering quality education, inclusive, and of course, sustainable. Because being flexible and being offering cutting-edge programs, then we can provide different learning opportunities to different individuals. So I think, these are the references. So I thank you for listening, and I hope I did not exceed so much of my time. These are the resources, these are the links that I want to share with you. If you want to know more about the different initiatives of the University of the Philippines Open University, then you can access all these materials or links. So thank you very much, Professor Dewi. Back to you. I will stop my sharing now. Thank you very much.
Professor Melinda, what a presentation. I love it. You inspired me, and I think it will inspire the participant for this seminar. Thank you so much. And now you can take a break.
Thank you.
Before, dear colleagues and participants, before we start with the second keynote speaker, I would like to inform you that you can do the attendance list. So you have to fill out the present list. It is mandatory for the attendance to get the e-certificates. So we have 10 minutes from now to fill out the present list. And I would like also to mention that for the second AAOU presidential speech webinar, the participants is up to 1,053 participants. And I hope today the participants will be also have a great number. But because of the different system of registration, we still wait for the number of participants that attend this webinar session. And I would like to, I make a note from the Professor Melinda presentation. It is true that now the OER is very, very important, and OER policy, especially for university like us, Open University, should provide more OER from time to time, because it will be used by so many people, and in the condition of COVID-19, the OER really help us. And also, a direction for the use of online education. So, because we are working in the Open University, and OPOU is leading in distance education in Philippines, I do agree that the online education will be more recognized by many people due to the COVID-19. So it's some kind of blessing in disguise. So even though we have a very hard time with COVID-19, but instantly, only within 1 month or 2 months, everybody knows the online learning system. It is so, can I say it's beautiful, it's amazing. Yeah, so everybody knows the online system now. In Indonesia, it's also the same things happen. So everybody, most of university ask Professor Ojat to help them with the learning management system. So we offer the learning management system for the other university that don't have the learning management system yet. So, Professor Ojat, you are famous in Indonesia because you help so many universities to provide the learning management system. And I think it's also happened in your country, Professor Melinda, and also in Pakistan. I think virtual university also have a great helpful for other universities. And I hope all of the participants, attendees already fill in the present list. And now we continue with our second keynote speaker, Professor Dr. Naeem Tariq. So you have 20 minutes for your presentation. And Professor, I would like to introduce once again, Professor Naeem Tariq is the Rector and Director of Finance of Virtual University of Pakistan. He also has a tons of experience and achievement besides his responsibility that he has right now. Professor Naeem Tariq has the educational and experiential credential in financial management. So no wonder he was assigned by his university as the Director of Finance in 2004 up to now. And he also a fellow member of the prestigious institution Chartered Accountant of Pakistan, and he is very concerned with the use of technology for his university. That's why the Virtual University of Pakistan became the most contemporary and technologically advanced university. So today, he will present a specific topic about flipping, microcredential, and MOOCs. The topic is very closely related and relevant to discuss in the situations of COVID-19. How flipping, microcredential, and MOOCs have an impact and maybe help education sector to overcome education barrier due to the COVID-19. Without further ado, please welcome Dr. Naeem Tariq. Dr. Naeem Tariq, I hand over the microphone to you.
Well, thank you, Professor Dewi and Professor Ojat, and obviously Dr. Melinda and all others for giving me this opportunity. And from Pakistan, greetings from Pakistan, from Virtual University, and Assalamu Alaikum. And with hopes and prayers for the safe and betterment of this community from this COVID and other things. So let me upload the slide. So the slides are uploading. So it is a very great opportunity initiated by Professor Ojat and University Terbuka under the forum of AAOU. These presidential speeches and these talks, I think they will set a way forward for the open and distant institutions and universities. And the terms of reference they have crafted is really very commendable. And I think this should continue for the long and for the betterment of education. And obviously, it is the time that, as pointed out by Professor Melinda, it's a very well-crafted document. And I think all these issues and all the solutions, especially I will talk about the issues, they are being faced in Pakistan, and I think as pointed out by Dr. Dewi, in Indonesia, and the rest of the Africa and Asia, being a few countries like China, Japan, Korea. I think we all should learn from these, and it is time. We are ready. The open and distance education are ready. They are spreading their arms. It's time that the conventional universities should come forward, and we should have a blended platform. As pointed out by Dr. Melinda, that in a speech, online learning is not the solution. It is the help or coordination to way forward to bridge the gap between the conventional and when the times come, when such times come, when the conventional education is not available freely, then comes the open and distance educations, and both of them should come forward and blend together and make the use of it, the best use of it. And I think that is and that should be the way forward in the times to come. So coming to my presentation, the virtual university, its vision is to become an internationally acclaimed technology-based university that improves access to higher education and while maintaining highest quality standards and affordability also. So the mission is, there are a lot of missions, but the major missions are to provide highest quality of education to all aspiring students irrespective of their age, gender, religion, geographical locations by using modern ICT, best working environment to faculty and staff to create a culture of research, innovations and cooperations, and unhindered access to all educational resources. As I am also thankful for the organizations of the AAOU to on air our documentary of the last year. That was a really very good experience we have, and I think all of us enjoyed the interconnectivity, and we have learned a lot from each other experiences. So VU was established in 2002. It is the first university in Pakistan, and I think in many of the areas, which is totally based on ICT and distance learning. So till now we have more than 3,000 students, 300,000 students, and 70,000 graduates who have been graduated from this university till now, covering almost the entire country. And we have also some students from overseas, but they are Pakistanis as yet, because our lectures, they are bilingual. But our study material, which is freely available, and that is you can access it freely and download it from our websites. I will share the websites later on. So we are the pioneer in ICT-based education through broadcast, television, and internet. And I think as you are viewing the dish, so I think not many universities, not even in Europe or America, will have this thing in their university, in their campus. So it is a very unique feature. We have our own studios, as you can see in the pictures, and we have fully equipped state-of-the-art equipments, NLEs, and all these things to record and broadcast our lectures. So these are also available on DVDs and on YouTube and on our websites. So all the LMS, the learning management system, we have developed our own LMS, and it is very robust and it's ever evolving. It is highly efficient, transparent examination system we have. We are not yet 100% online real time, but the full exam is in the electronic mode, and the unique papers are being generated all across Pakistan in around 100 centers. And we are taking around more than 300,000 papers in just 15 days. And then the result is out in within next 15 days. So from end to end, the examinations and the result, that is around 25 to 30 days time place, the time frame which we take for this purpose. Another thing is the launch of digital skill program in the last bottom you are seeing. So we have trained over 1 million people, freelancers in Pakistan, and they have really jumped forth in making Pakistan a fourth level country in freelancing. We have developed courses, we have launched this, and this is a free program funded by government of Pakistan. And later on, I will say this is a sort of micro-credentials. And we are thinking how to make this available on the AAOU forum so that most of the community can benefited from this program. So coming to the point is the first is the flipped classroom model. And again, I will point out to Dr. Melinda, the conventional was down, really down, and the online was up, really up. So if we see a traditional conventional classroom, they are teachers, they are lecturing, students, they are listening. There's a conventional teaching mode, as pointed out by Dr. Dewi also. So teachers are lecturing and students are just copying and then just go to home and they do their homework and come back and repeat the same things time and again over and over. So the students with the homework, they really get exhausted. And nowadays, our children in Pakistan, and I think in your countries also, they are having the classroom from work from home basis. They are on Zooms and it is really cumbersome at times without, you need some asynchronous models to bridge with Zooms or MS Teams to give some credibility to the students, to give some breathing space to the students, which is not being provided by Zoom or conventional modes. Problems, students are passive learners, teachers are sage on the stage, and the solution is? The solution is to give students active learners while teachers should be the guide on the stage. So here comes the flipped classroom mode or definition. It's a pedagogical model in which the typical lecture homework elements of a course are reversed. So coming to the flip terms is coming, you have witnesses, pizza makers, they are throwing the pizza up and coming down. So this is basically the flip mode. We are flipping the classrooms. The homework will be done at the schools and the learning process will be done at home. So short videos are there, viewed by students and things like that. So the two pictures will depict the difference between the two modes. It is a mean to increase teacher contact time, an environment that increases student responsibility, blending of direct instructions and constructive learning, class where all students are engaged in their learning. So it will give an opportunity to students, to passive learners who can't share their feelings or they can't participate in the classrooms. They can actively recommend, they can write, and they can explain their issues, and I think that can be replied to by the teachers equally responsible, with equal responsibility, and each and every student will have time and ways to have access to the quality of education. So flipped classroom is not just online videos about replacing teachers with videos. We should be clear of this. What is a flipped classroom? It is not just online learning. Students working without structure? No. Students working in isolation? No. Spending the entire class online? Not at all. So these are you can say these are not the parameters of a flipped classroom mode. So this is a Bloom's taxonomy. It's a picture to share you what is and what is not. Basically, it's before class, remembering. It's during the class, analyzing and applying. Then you have to evaluate and analyze and evaluate. And then it is creating. So in view, as I will just give you a glimpse of view perspective. Courses of practical nature can be selected as a palette study from each department like programming, math, stat, economics, the other disciplines. More effective if video lectures of selected courses meet the criteria of flipped classroom. Basically, what it we have developed lectures. They are available online on the YouTube, on our forums. The students can watch the lectures and they have all the access to mute the lectures, to rewind back, to listen again and again, to listen many times to the same teacher. So the teacher is at your command. You can have the teacher in the morning, in the evening, in your mobiles, in your laptops. So the access is there, the mobility is there, the flexibility is there. And by listening time and again, you can have more awareness, more understanding of what the teacher is saying. And yes, that the video is backed by the recorded material, the study pack. So both is accessible to our students. Then they have the LMS to commute with our teachers, to communicate with our teachers. They are asking questions, they can communicate with each other. The students, they are communicating with each other, discussing with each other. And luckily on this platform, they have access to the past many years of Q&A. The archive is there. If I am enrolled in the current semester, I can go back in 2014 or 2010, whenever the class was started. So I can review the questions from 2010 onwards till date. So initially, small courses will be effective for analyzing and developing this strategy. Platform need to be identified which will be used for student activities management, as it will be online in our case. Coming to micro-credentials, this is interesting, and I think it is the way forward for all of us, for conventional universities, and especially for universities like ours, the distance educations, the open universities, the OER forums. If we see the micro-credentials, okay, what are micro-credentials? First, let's analyze. These are mini qualifications, diplomas, certifications in which learners are required to complete a certain number of activities, assessment or projects related to the topic to earn the certificate. So it could be 1 credit hour, it could be 3 credit hours, it can be a combinations of many credit hours. And it is non-degree micro-credentials tend to be very specific in terms of skills development, and it is the need of the hour due to emerging technologies and the education associated with them. So if I am a finance person and I am doing some management, I need some HR course, I can do a micro-credentials. I don't have to enroll for a major course in HR or management or maybe another for some education if I'm an education sector. Or if we take an example of a health associate, if he becomes a manager, if a doctor becomes a manager, then obviously he or she will be in need of some courses of HR or management. So he or she can easily enroll in micro-credentials and get benefit of that. Emerging technological interventions create demand for new technical and professional skills, expertise, and talent. So these micro-credentials, you need not much time. For a 1 credit hour course, you can easily sit on your laptop computers if you've got even on your mobile phone, and you can record it and upload it anywhere from anywhere. And access will be the global access will be available. Educators develop many qualifications, diplomas, certificates, micro-credentials to meet the demand of industry. In this regard, the online distance learning models are deemed to be the most relevant and most suitable, as individuals cannot go back to educational institutions every now and then and cannot give up their professional obligation. So even if you are a remote area, and you need some information, some knowledge, this becomes a lifelong learning concepts in mode also, and that is really very helpful. They can be awarded for soft and hard skills. Educational institutions needs to understand that ever-changing world needs quick professional development, whereas degree programs are usually longer. So here, presence of online education, we have AAOU forum, platform emergence and leading universities collaborations, Coursera, edX. These are professional certifications. Acceptance of digital certification badge by the industry. So here, the industry and education institution is a very, very good opportunity for developing linkages and making life more easier, more successful for the educationists and for the learners and for the workforce. This will be a boundaryless educational and skills development. So I think here I will suggest that AAU is a forum and it should work on the development of microcredentials. We have got MOOCs, we have got LMSs, we have got other things, we have got expertise. And I think it is time that this forum of Asia and Africa, they should come together and increase the accessibility and provision of education all across the regions. We have very tough regions. The issues pointed out by Dr. Melinda, we are facing in Pakistan, remote areas, the connectivity issues, things like that. So all with the collaboration with each other, help with national, international level collaborations, I think it will be very easier to overcome such issues. And the policy guidelines which you have suggested should be taken forward by these forums, AAOU forums, by Commonwealth of Learning, ICGE, UNESCO, and really the 2030 target of SDGs should be highlighted and taken on board with practical emphasis to make them really, really adoptable and helpful for the community as a whole. And yes, these programs, Oxford University, MIT, Stanford, and we are viewing that Google and Microsoft, they have started offering such type of certifications in Europe and America. They are quite flexible. So it's time we should also adopt this and move forward. What preparations are required? Strong academia and industry linkages, as I mentioned earlier. Professional industries for content development. We need joint ventures, and we have very many digital platforms, and we can have joint ventures with each other, with them. Advanced learning management systems with more learners engagement, and there again it should be a blended form to cover the synchronous and asynchronous models both. These LMSs now should be adoptable and flexible and having the built-in flexibilities of video linkages and videos, etc., to be more robust and more accessible. Digital video productions expertise for producing effective audio-video contents. Contemporary pedagogy for assessment and micro-credential digital badges should be introduced. So at VU, as pointed out earlier, we have got specialization certificates designed for graduates having 16 years of education who want to learn new specializations. 18 weeks, they are of 18 weeks durations, and they can be shortened to 1 credit hours, as I mentioned earlier. So these are in banking, in finance, in HR, and management, in marketing. Never-ending list. As mentioned earlier, our DigiSkill program, that is a sort of a micro-credentials. We have developed courses for our freelancers. These are 12 weeks courses, and they are making life easier for our freelancers. So this is a brief. We have developed SEO, e-marketing, graphic design, AutoCAD, WordPress, e-commerce, creative writing, freelancing, QuickBooks, And these are really helping our population to very much to increase their capacity of earning on a freelance basis. Our future plans, we are working on industrial linkages, MOU signed with some private sectors to bring in their expertise for what they want. So with that, we will be able to develop our courses accordingly. And yes, collaboration with AAOU partners, we should partner together. So coming to the MOOCs now, the third part of my talk. MOOCs is very common now. So I think most of us, even the people who are sitting in this webinars, they will be quite aware of MOOCs, what is MOOCs and what is the concept. Started in way back, but I think from late 80s and early 90s, the concept of MOOCs was overwhelmed in the first in the Europe and American natures, and then lately in Asians and now in the African countries also. So it is, the concept arose due to the advent of technology. Theoretical foundation lies in the idea of connectivism, exponential increase in the power of connectivity. Yes, when 5Gs and telepresence will help us to achieve a better connection and to overcome the problems which we are facing nowadays. And again, then COVID scenario has highlighted this MOOCs platform and all the e-learning platforms very much. Here I will add that the internet technologies such as web browsers, search engines, wikis, online discussion forums, social networks, these are all contributing to the new avenues of learning, and we should adopt these and we should move forward. Is the future of e-learning? It is a shift in the paradigm shift. Now, the paradigm shift will be totally shifted from where it is going now and where will it move in the future. The gig economies and the crowdsourcing, free and open access to educational resources. As pointed out earlier, education should be the right. It is the right of the children in my country, the children in each and every country of this world. They have to have the free access to education. We have emerging and hybrid disciplines. Disruptive technologies are taking place, ubiquitous yet unique, requires bespoke instructional courses. So our open courseware is a mini MOOCs. It's a MOOCs within our system. We have our own recorded lectures of more than 10,000 hours. And our OCW website, it is ocw.vu.edu.pk, that is available, and anyone can have free access to our contents, and this is a way forward. Provide richer, more diverse perspectives, can be recorded and offered in multiple ways. So post COVID-19, it has paved the way to new normal that relies heavily on ICTs for everyday business. Education is no different, and almost all countries of the world have shifted to online teaching by utilizing internet and broadcast TV channels. VU is the only institution of the country that could manage uninterrupted education without compromising any aspect of its education and quality standards. So we have our admissions. When we start with this lockdown, we were going to open our spring admissions. So we did open the admissions. All the admissions were online, and the classes were online. Our workforce, they were at home. Our students, they were at their homes, and all the teaching, all the perspectives went very safely and very soundly. And so we are now at the closing end of our spring semesters, and I think in next few days we will be taking our final examinations. So we are also providing support to other institutions by sharing our LMSs and our experiences. So ODL in general and similar models like VU are the solution to all strategic, operational and academic challenges. Justify to invest resources in educational technologies, and as said again, that has to become funded by the national and international forums. It needs heavy funding, and no doubt this funding will be the return, it will give the return in future that will be remarkable returns, unimaginable returns. If we spend $100 today, I think in 10 years time, they can pay back to more than $1,000. I think it will be a 1:10 or maybe 1:50 the return if we talk about the return. And here I will also like to add that this our mode of education, the open and distance learning, it is the cheapest as compared to conventional learning mode. Here at VU, our 4 years program, 4 years degree program, 8 semesters, they are concluded in less than $1,000. So you can well imagine that how cheap it is, and that can be made more cheaper if we have got funding from national and international forums and bodies and governments. AAOU is doing a tremendous job by bringing all relevant stakeholders on board, and I think that should keep going on. So at the end, I am again thankful to the forum, and here I also want to wish in person Professor Ojat and Juti for their 36th. I believe that is the 36th anniversary of the UT going on, and so many congratulations, greetings, and with the hopes that all our institutions, wherever we are, in which country we are, progress, and we should collaborate, and we should come forward and take the work. Thank you very much.
Professor Naeem, thank you so much for your presentation. I think we have a lot of, we learned a lot from your presentation. You talk about the Philippines, micro-credential, and also MOOCs. So you covered a lot of your experience from your institution regarding the use of advanced technology. And also, one thing that impressed me, the virtual university during and post the COVID-19 support many others institutions by sharing its LMS and sharing resources. That kind of action definitely help us to survive in facing the pandemic COVID-19. Well, before we begin with... I would
like to add one thing.
Yes, okay, please.
We have also helped, there are entry tests for our engineering universities. So they came to us and we arranged their entry test all across Pakistan, in all across countries. And more than 38,000 students, they were benefited from this entry test. This was the first experience. We have the online entry test, and we help our engineering universities to conduct this entry test on our platform. So with these collaborations, again, we have started collaborating with each other, and I think internationally we should also collaborate and to bring more and more what we have gained, what you have gained, what we are gaining. So we should come forward and we should make a platform accessible and flexible to all the community who wants to have education, who wants to learn, and who wants to leap forward. Yes.
Yes. I think it's an excellent move from the Virtual University of Pakistan. I also note that the micro-credential, I think it will be the future education, because we will work with many industry, and they only need small part of the whole study program. So the micro-credential will help Open University to create more and more topics that are relevant to the industry.
Definitely.
Now I want to remind to the attendees, the participants, to fill in the attendance list, present list, because after, if you already fill in the attendance list, then you will get the e-certificate. And later on, after the QA session, we would like also to remind you to fill in the feedback form. That will be very useful for the committee. Okay, now it's time for us to have a session, the question and answer. Maybe the committee, have you already list of question? Okay, we have some question. This is from Wahidin Riyandi from the Universitas Terbuka. The question is addressed to Dr. Melinda. So, the opportunities and equality and equal access are important issues in today's world education. These include children with disabilities or children with special needs. There are challenges that hinder inclusive education, such as physical, communication, social barriers, and so on. How is the role and support of university? I mean, maybe university, open university, I think, yeah, open university, yes. So that the inclusive education system can be implemented effectively and can make the meaning of education become alive and have a soul. Okay, Professor Melinda?
Yes, thank you very much for that question. Yes, indeed, this is a very important question for us to look into. How can open universities do it? In my own opinion and from my perspective, open universities are more in a better position to do this, especially when we talk of using technologies so that we can accommodate these people, those who are physically challenged, those experiencing social barriers, and even economic barrier, financial barrier, for instance. So, as I mentioned by Professor Naeem, that studying in an open university is less costly, right? I mean, if you will compare it to the conventional classroom, much more so if we will be talking of open education. So, like for instance, massive open online courses, MOOCs can very well remove many barriers, admission requirements, cost to education because they are open, they are free, and even sometimes schedule. If you will not be so strict enough about the schedule, then even the time barrier or the schedule barrier is removed when we are talking of massive open online courses. I have also mentioned, of course, we're not just focusing on technologies here. Like assistive technologies. So there are already many assistive technologies that we can use. But when we are talking also of other things, like for instance, the universal design for learning, the website content accessibility guidelines, these are the things that we can all integrate into our open education initiative. So with the right technology and with the right framework for our courses, like the massive open online courses, open educational resources, then open universities can very well accommodate these marginalized sectors or groups in our society. So thank you very much for that question.
Okay, thank you for Professor Melinda, and I hope Wahidin Riyandi, you got the message from Professor Melinda for your question. And is there another question? Okay, now this question is addressed to for two of the speakers, for Professor Naeem and also for Professor Melinda. The question is, how many Asian MOOCs courses are currently available? And then the second one is, COVID-19 happened, we can say suddenly. Teacher upscaling, especially in the use of technology for teaching, is serious problem. So we have problems in teaching skill, teacher skill in using the technology. Can you share with us how the people in Pakistan and Philippines cope with this situation? Okay, maybe Professor Naeem first answer this question, and then Professor Melinda. Professor Naeem.
Yes, thank you. So as already pointed out, we have our own MOOCs at Putri University. We have got 10,000 hours of lectures. They are available on YouTube. And again, I think the Indians, they know Urdu quite well. So they can be benefited from these courses. They are bilingual in English and Urdu. And the study material available is totally in English. That is also available on our OCW website. I repeat again, it is ocw.edu.vu, ocw.vu.edu.pk. I repeat, ocw.vu.edu.pk. And also the DigiSkill website is digiskills.pk. So these websites are available. They are, the access is there. You can go, and these are sort of MOOCs. These are MOOCs, not sort of MOOCs. And in Pakistan, yes, as pointed out earlier, our system, our virtual online systems goes unhindered. And we have also provided support to other universities. And in the last, as pointed out, the entry tests have been arranged for the engineering universities. So again, we have a technology-based, we are technology-based universities. We have that skills. We have got televisions and all the production management. We have that skills. Talking about technology, we have ICT skills. And obviously, we have our own software. And we have also started a mini software house where the students of the last semesters in the computer sciences, they are being provided with international-like atmosphere where they will come, they will be groomed, how to sit, how to wear their clothes, and how to manage the work. So it is a complete work facility, just like a software, and they are being trained by the professionals over there. And our teachers, our academic staff, definitely with almost 18 years of experience, we have got experts in academics. They can upload, they can download, they can teach, they can provide facilities to the other staff, to the universities of other staff, how to make use of online learning. So this is a very big resource, and that is available. And as said earlier, we, the open and the distance universities, we are open. So if anyone wants to wish, they can come to us, and we will be glad to provide assistance, whatever we can, to such universities, to such aspirants, whatever it is. So I think in Pakistan, yes, there are difficulties, but we are managing, and hopefully the government is also contributing. They are providing internet connectivity in the remotest areas, and I think in the next 6 months or 12 months, 6 to 12 months, in the areas which are not yet connected or which have low connectivity will be upgraded, and will have parallel sessions with students and learners of the major cities. Thank you.
Can I give my answer now, Professor Dewi?
Yes. Thank you, Professor Naeem. Now, it's time for Professor Melinda to answer the question, the same question.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the first question I can answer, that being Asian MOOCs, about Asian MOOCs. So we have developed many courses. We have shared, in fact, the Asian MOOCs materials or courses that we made available in the Asian MOOCs portal came from the different member universities. So it's not just one who developed the courses there, but many member universities of AAOU. So the last, I lost count of how many were we able to develop and share, because there were many institutions who share their MOOCs with using that platform. But the last batch that we offered was on or were on languages. So like for instance, we have MOOCs on Bahasa. Very popular on Nihongo, offered by our colleagues from the Open University Japan. I think we have on Mandarin. We have, of course, the conversational English. We have the Vietnamese. We have Thai. So we have all those languages, which that's the last batch. But we are now working on the open batch system, and we are now reviewing and looking into the different MOOCs that we have on the platform. But anytime we can again offer these courses after the evaluation and the refinement that we are doing now. On the second question, but then again, I also want to emphasize that we continue to invite our member institutions to offer their MOOCs, share their MOOCs through the Asian MOOCs platform. So that invitation is still open. On the second question, how did we cope with this concern of upskilling our teachers, especially on the use of technology for teaching? Okay, so what we did here, of course, training, as what has been mentioned by Professor Tariq. Training is, of course, the first step, the first action that we did, the first response that we did. But what we did on the part of the UPOU as part of our training is to look at the technologies, the digital platforms that are open access, and that are more popular, and made that as our platform for teaching our fellow teachers, our fellow educators, on how to make use of these technologies for their teaching. We also look into what technologies or what platforms will require the less learning curve, so to speak. So like for instance, even the use of Facebook, even the use of YouTube, those things, if those platforms, those apps, wherein we can say that many, not only the teachers, but also the students are familiar with, then we also included those platforms in our training. Actually, what is more critical here is really the pedagogical underpinning of the shift from face-to-face to online. It's not so much on the use of technology, but really what will count to make the education, the content, the instructional content of quality, in the same quality, just like we are offering in classroom instruction. So it's both the technology and pedagogy that we included in the training of our teachers. And it's not just our teachers, we also provided preparations, webinar sessions to the students and other stakeholders in the education system. Because it's not just the teachers, it's also about the university officials, it's also about the parents, it's also about the other stakeholders, the community, who will be helping so that we can really address this challenge brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. So thank you very much for the question.
Okay, Doctor.
I
yes?
want to
you want to add something?
Question, I want to add two more things. In Pakistan, as asked by Doctor from the India, we have our HEC, Higher Education Commission. So on HEC platform, they have placed MOOCs and our LMS, and many of the universities were provided free access to that platform. Yeah. And in that way, they have covered a lot of areas in their respective locations or things like that. And secondly, during this period, one thing I have experienced and I have learned that our students, they are more tech savvy, and we have to be more, and we have to provide more technical trainings to our academics and our administrative staff, because they are not that tech savvy. So this is one problem, and I think in other countries like India and other, they are also facing such issues. So again, these platforms, the open and distance learning platform, they can provide trainings to the teachers as well as to the students. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Professor Naeem, and thank you for Dr. Daneswar for your question. We still have several questions, but we only have 10 minutes. So the next question for Professor Melinda from Ramatullah Ayu Hasmiati from Muhammadiyah University, Kalimantan Timur. On the guidelines of distance education during COVID-19, there is one policy that mentioned about provide financial support for low-income students. My question is, how the implementation of this policy, remembering during this situation, lots of people having trouble economically. What the methods and steps to decide which student whom really deserve? Thank you. Professor Melinda.
Yes, thank you very much for that question. If I may share what we are doing at the university, in my university, we classify the students. We really look at the profile of the students. So this can also be done if you are looking at it at the national level. This can be done by the ministry, our Ministry of Education. But what we did at the university is to classify our students. Like for instance, for this particular group of students, what would they be needing? Is it in terms of gadget, assistance to buy gadget? Or is it gadget plus connectivity? So something like that. So there is some sort of grouping the students so that we can really determine what form of assistance would they need. We have to remember that when we talk of COVID-19, you are right. It's not just about the technology. It's not just about access. It is also about really providing for themselves, because there are so many things that are occupying their attention right now. So let us look at what forms of assistance would the different groups of students will be needing. We can do that by university, and we can do that at the national level, considering also that the education assistance that we will be getting, the country will be getting, for instance, or the university will be getting, for instance, can be put to much use and can have more impact. And this can be coordinated across universities through the help or supervision of our respective ministries of education. So classify the needs of the students.
Okay, thank you, Professor Melinda. Next question. The next question is from Sinta Rosma Dewi from Universitas Terbuka, addressed to Professor Naeem. The question is, how to motivate the passive student when joining the class so we can understand the learning materials?
Well, very good questions, and I think it is hard to explain it, or it is hard to answer. It is about how to motivate a passive student. But in this, when you are in passive learning, we are in passive learning. We are providing asynchronous model to all the students. So they don't have to raise their hands, or they don't have to stand up to ask, to reply for questions in the classroom. So in a way, they are motivated. They can ask questions on their LMS. They can put their questions and they get the answers, get the replies. Or even they can have access to the questions and answers being replied on the different forums. We have discussion boards, multiple type of discussion boards, in which students are replying to each other, in which teacher is replying to the student queries. And in that way, the passive learners can gain. Again, as pointed out, the video lectures that is in your palm, it is in your pocket, it's in your hands. You can pause the student, you can pause the lecture, you can rewind the teacher, you can listen to him or her time and again. And in that way, a passive or a not so bright student can have access to the quality of education, and with the passage of time, he or she can adopt to these things. And we have instances in which very low grade students, they have managed to come forward and compete with the finest of the students. So these platforms are helping the passive students as well. I hope I'm able to reply to the questions.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, thank you, Professor Naeem. I think it's time. Still one more question. This for Professor Naeem. Introducing new technologies is particularly easy, but changing the people mindset, including the policymaker, it's very different. How do you convince the policymaker in Pakistan that distant education, distant learning, flipped classroom is a choice, particularly during the COVID-19 outbreak? Please, Dr. Naeem.
Thank you. And I believe me, it is really very difficult. I think it is harder than climbing the Mount Everest to change the mindset of the people. But our story goes back from 2002 onwards. Our founding rector, Dr. Naveed Malik, many of these forums, they know him very well. He is the founding rector of these universities, and for 16 years he dedicated his life on this forum. And you know, he has made this forum a very robust one and very, very alive. And we are, since over a decade, we are with various universities, with various ministries and policymakers to come and join hands with us. The first breakthrough was with National University in our capital, that is commonly known as NUST. Way back in, I think, 2012 or 2013, we started providing them our examination system for their entry test, and since then they are adopting to our system, and in a session there are 70,000 plus students which are being tested on this platform. Recently, as conveyed, we are with different universities, engaging them to come with us, to have joined hands with us. We are talking with our ministry, through our ministry, with different ministries and HEC, to convince them that this is an equal opportunity employer, or this is an equal opportunity platform, just like a conventional university. The quality is there, the quality parameters are there, and yes, we are fighting for development of an ODL policy at the national level. And I think these policies and these quality matters, these are the need of the international forum. All the forums, I think, AAOU, the CALL, the ICDE, and others like-minded, they should come and adopt, and the UNESCO has been guidelines. But our governments and our policymaker, our stakeholders, they are still reluctant. But keep trying. We are on it. We are crossing our fingers. We are doing it, and we are trying it. And the change is slow, but change is there. And yes, as pointed out, this was a blessing in disguise. There was a not a hue and cry. There was a wave. Oh yes, we are sure university is there. So let's seek. We have provided guidance, we have provided our LMS to whosoever have approached us, and we are doing it. And we are with various government departments for this development of ODL policies. And we want that the doors be open at the conventional universities. And luckily, we have also won a project from the government, that is the blended learning project, in which we are going to provide different platforms for the skill-based, for vocational training, for academics, all these things. So hopefully, it is a slow process, but if you stick to it, you continue with this, hopefully change will be there, and a day will come, and I think this day will come sooner, when the open and distance universities forums are equally approached as likewise as a conventional university. Definitely.
Thank you, Professor Naeem. Well, Professor Melinda, Professor Naeem, I think we have to end this session because it's almost 3 o'clock. And I would like to close the session with a quote from the Nehru. Crises and deadlocks, when they occur, have at least this advantage, that they force us to think. This is truly is. What happens during the pandemic COVID-19 for us to think and move forward despite difficulties situations. And thank you so much for Professor Ojat Darojat, Professor Melinda, Professor Naeem for the presentation today. And hopefully we will meet again in the 4th AAOU Presidential Speech Series 2020. See you and have a great day. And I hand over this microphone to Dr. Rahmat. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ibu Dewi. First of all, before we move to other sessions, I would like to make a little bit correction in the first question. Yes, this one. Actually, the first question is from Dr. Daneshwar Harichandan, and then the second one is from Dr. Supriyanto, M.Ph.D. from Jakarta. Hope this makes slide clear. Well, next, I also for set up and to share your knowledge and experience with other colleagues in Asia by submitting articles to the AAOU journal. Okay. Yes, this is the PowerPoint. Please, we are inviting and waiting your submissions, and let us make distance education in Asia, particularly in Asia, nourish and spread throughout the world. So once again, who are joining with us today, you are very much welcome to submit the paper to the OU journal. That's the information from us. And now I would like to remind all of you the 34th AOU annual conference, which will be held in Open University of Sri Lanka. Please visit our website, or you can type the 34th AOU conference in Sri Lanka. Previously, it was scheduled to be held this year, but due to COVID-19, we postponed and moved it to the next year. Particularly in the 1st to the 3rd June 2021 in the beautiful of Sri Lanka. I would like to share with you a short video about the conference, and we hope that by seeing the video, you will be more interested to come to Sri Lanka. Please. Yeah, please.
On all 4 directions are works in stone and roundels of gold, broad the quadrangles and mansions of mighty mold, tall the gabled houses and balconies. Where else? Not on earth, but in heavens are those of such elegance and girth. nation steeped in history. A nation with incredible cultural diversity. A nation of heavenly heights and purity. A nation of legendary beaches. A nation whose capital, Colombo, resonates with tradition and modernity. Occupying a pride of place in this unique nation and the city is the Open University of Sri Lanka, OUSL, Sri Lanka's premier ODL institution. And we are ready to welcome AAOU to Sri Lanka in 2020. Our venue is the Cinnamon Grand Hotel, which offers exquisite conference facilities, plus a blend of the global cultures. Our theme for AAOU 2020 is Opening Minds for a Sustainable Future, reorienting ODL to surmount challenges. With this theme, we intend to create intellectual spaces and opportunities for reflecting on the UNESCO concern of education as a means of sustainable development.
As a founding member of the AAOU, the Open University of Sri Lanka celebrates its 40th anniversary in 2020. We offer AAOU our inimitable and peerless experiences to open minds and cultivate the notions of sustainable education.
OUSL and AAOU. Let us expand the horizons of ODL.
Well, it was actually the oldest version of the video, and as I mentioned before, that the conference will be held at the 1st and the 3rd June 2021 in Sri Lanka. Before we close this session, I would like to say thank you to Professor Melinda Bandalaria, and also to Professor Naeem Tariq, and also to Professor Ojat Darojat, the President of the AAOU, Dr. Dewi Padmo, the Chair of the session, your participation. We thank you very much for your participation, for your willingness to share your ideas and also your experience with us. Thank you. And before we end this session, I would like to read some announcement for all audience.
Pak Rahmat,
Yes, Pak.
may I have a little time to
Okay,
saying thank you, Professor
please.
Naeem, Tariq, and to Professor Melinda for give us congratulations this Natalis for UT.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pak. Okay, yuk sekarang itu. Okay, thank you, and then see you in the next AOU President Speech series. Then now for the audience, please complete the feedback form below. Completing the feedback is very, very appreciated because from your feedback we know how to improve the next AOU. And then on behalf of the committee, I would like to apologize for the technical problem during our webinar today. You have 3 hours from now to complete the feedback. Once again, you have 3 hours to complete the feedback. After 3 hours, you cannot complete the feedback, and then the attendance list is now closed. Completing the attendance list and the feedback is the requirement to get the e-certificate. Once again, I thank you very much to the speakers, the president, and to the chair, and to all attendees. See you again in the 6th September. In the 6th October, in the last or the 4th AOU Presidential Speech Series, and we will be presenting 2 distinguished speakers. We will please check our website regularly. Thank you again and see you. Have a nice day.
Dengan tuntutan era digital yang semakin pesat, memacu kita untuk terus meningkatkan potensi sumber daya manusia yang terintegrasi dan mampu menunjang produktivitas. Namun, perkembangan yang kian padat tersebut perlu diimbangi dengan solusi pembelajaran yang efektif dan modern yang mampu mengimbangi rutinitas masyarakat masa kini. Sebuah sarana yang mampu mengatasi keterbatasan tempat dan waktu yang menjadi masalah utama bagi banyak orang dalam mengembangkan diri dan peningkatan karir di era digital yang berdampak pada gaya hidup. Universitas Terbuka hadir untuk menjawab masalah tersebut dengan penerapan sistem pembelajaran terbuka dan jarak jauh. Sistem yang terbukti efektif meningkatkan daya jangkau dan pemerataan pendidikan tinggi yang berkualitas bagi seluruh lapisan masyarakat. Sistem pembelajaran Universitas Terbuka memungkinkan para mahasiswa untuk belajar secara fleksibel dan terbuka dengan beberapa keuntungan seperti waktu pendaftaran yang terbuka sepanjang tahun, sehingga Anda tidak perlu khawatir untuk terlambat melakukan pendaftaran. Ruang, waktu, dan tempat yang fleksibel bagi mahasiswa. Hal ini sangat berguna bagi para mahasiswa yang tetap ingin mengembangkan wawasannya dimanapun dan kapanpun. Materi ajar cetak maupun digital yang mudah diakses di seluruh pelosok Indonesia dan mancanegara. Memberi kesempatan kepada segala golongan dan usia yang siap belajar untuk mengembangkan ilmu dan kemampuannya di segala bidang. Memiliki 39 kantor regional di seluruh Indonesia dan pusat layanan luar negeri yang selalu siap mendukung kegiatan operasional dan jalinan kerjasama dengan berbagai institusi baik nasional dan internasional. Serta dilengkapi dengan berbagai fasilitas penunjang proses pembelajaran seperti UT Radio, UT TV, layanan bantuan belajar, hingga perpustakaan yang dapat diakses secara online. Memiliki 4 fakultas, Fakultas Keguruan dan Ilmu Pendidikan, Fakultas Hukum Ilmu Sosial dan Ilmu Politik, Fakultas Ekonomi, Fakultas Sains dan Teknologi, dengan lebih dari 35 program studi sarjana dan program pasca sarjana. Universitas Terbuka, making higher education open to all.